Who even drops out of school these days? It's post-war. You're a disgrace to our family legacy. Don't pretend you belong as my son's wife. I was invited to my sister-in-law's wedding with my husband, but my mother-in-law, with her snobbish attitude toward education, looked down on me, a dropout, as if I were less than human. She cruelly remarked, "You don't belong here, just leave." With that, she forcefully ripped the corsage from my chest and stomped on it. Little did she know that her harsh words would spark a major incident in our family later on. I'm a 28-year-old married woman now. My husband and I both work hard, and while my resume states dropout, I had my reasons for leaving school in 9th grade. Life took me to an international company, where I met my husband through mutual acquaintances, and we ended up marrying. Every member of my husband's family boasts impressive educational backgrounds, thanks to my mother-in-law's obsession with academia. Yet neither my husband nor my sister-in-law ever flaunts their degrees or judges others for their education. They genuinely care for me, and we get along well. The only snag in our family dynamic is my mother-in-law and me. Our core values clash, and I doubt we'll ever truly understand one another. Regardless, I'm deeply in love with my husband and committed to our life together, so I strive to manage my relationship with my mother-in-law as best as I can. But my mother-in-law? She's a different story. If she dislikes someone, she can't simply ignore them. She goes out of her way to belittle them. Once, at a family dinner, I was served a meal meant only for me. "This is perfectly suitable for a dropout like you," she said dismissively. Who even drops out these days? Maybe she's from a time when women were told education was essential. All I had on my plate was a bowl of green bean soup and a scoop of mashed potatoes. "You should be grateful you even have mashed potatoes," my husband interjected. "I'm guessing your surprise was meant to disappoint my wife first, then impress her later." He was well aware of my mother-in-law's motives and had reassured me before we left home, saying, "I'll protect you, no matter what." My sister-in-law arrived a bit late, cheerfully apologizing as she laid out the dishes she had brought. I spotted some extravagant delicacies, worth $1,000 each. I was excited to share them with my sister-in-law. "Oh, and of course, you too, Mum," I added, realizing my husband was right about his protective instinct. I struggled to enjoy my meal, noticing my mother-in-law looked visibly bored, but she wasn't one to back down easily. Speaking of which, my nephew got into Monterey Schools of America. I wonder if someone like you, a dropout, can even grasp the prestige of such an institution. Having a mother like you must worry one about their child's future prospects, she continued, droning on about how this preschool had a program leading to partnerships with renowned international schools, which produced famous scholars and politicians. She rambled on like she had rehearsed it, and once satisfied, she asked, "So, what do you think?" It was clear she wanted me to falter, knowing I wouldn't be familiar with these institutions in my own country. People often said that dropping out was a national disgrace. My father-in-law is a quiet man and says nothing even when my mother-in-law hurls such insults. My sister-in-law tends to ignore her bragging and speaks at her own pace. She occasionally leans in to tell me, "This is really good," seeking my agreement, but I mostly tune out my mother-in-law's words. My husband keeps offering her wine, trying to get her tipsy and out of the way, while my sister-in-law whispers to me, "Sorry, just hang in there a little longer." Visiting their home always drains me, but I don't want to worry my husband or sister-in-law, so I pretend I'm just dancing through it. I suppose I'm just slow to catch on. My mother-in-law is strong-willed, convinced she's always right. Both my husband and sister-in-law know that openly challenging her is futile. My only choices are to endure or ignore her. Yet, I'm not sure how much longer I can put up with her blatant remarks, especially since her harassment extends beyond these visits. She often shows up at our home unannounced. "Here's my son's favorite," she would say, her voice dripping with disdain. "It's not for someone like you who dropped out." She brought gifts but never included anything for me. She insisted on a specific brand of tea and sent me out to buy it. When I returned, she had already left. It's manageable when my husband is around, but when she knows he isn't, I feel trapped. She spends hours lecturing me about the contributions of the well-educated, claiming that the less educated devalue our society. I never tell my husband about these encounters. I don't want to burden him with more worry than he already has. Then one day, my sister-in-law's marriage was arranged. A polite invitation arrived, announcing her wedding to her longtime boyfriend. My sister-in-law and I share a wonderful relationship. She considers me a sister. We often go shopping and dining together. She means the world to me, just like a real sister, so I eagerly accepted the invitation. On the day of the wedding, I arrived at the venue ahead of my husband because I had a hair appointment. To my surprise, my mother-in-law was already there. As soon as she spotted me, her face twisted with fury. I braced myself for criticism about my outfit or makeup and greeted her calmly, but she bellowed, "Why is a disgrace like you even here?" Her voice echoed throughout the venue. Even at a religious event, she couldn't hide her academic elitism. With so many guests present, she seemed intent on humiliating me for my educational background. Our family is full of well-educated people. You're the only one who dropped out. How dare you sit with our family? My daughter even said she regretted calling you her sister. She only wanted your brother here and hoped you would be turned away. She continued, her voice dripping with venom. Please get rid of that tacky crown. With that, she ripped the crown from my chest and stomped on it. It was a gift from my husband, something he had chosen just for me. I was so shocked that I turned my back on her and stormed out of the venue. I ran as fast as I could, my heels nearly coming off, until I found a nearby bench to catch my breath. I sat down, scrolling through my message history and looking at pictures I had taken with my sister-in-law, trying to calm my racing heart. There was no deceit in my sister-in-law's words. She truly valued our bond. I was ashamed to have believed my mother-in-law, even for a moment. Determined to change my attitude, I returned to the venue to celebrate my sister-in-law's special day. But as soon as I stepped inside, my mother-in-law's voice pierced the air. How dare you come back with that dropout face? Do you not understand what dropouts should do? They should leave. There's no place for them here. She kicked the chair that had my name on it in the bride's family section. The tension in the room was palpable, especially with most guests already seated. Ignoring her, I found a spot in the guest section, next to my brother-in-law. Unbelievable. Have you lost your mind? Then again, maybe it's too much to expect a dropout to understand social norms. She continued, her mocking laughter echoing as my face flushed with embarrassment. Just then, my brother-in-law rushed in, his face full of concern. She's the president of a business partner we have. We have a very good relationship, and I invited her, he shouted, defending me. Actually, I almost completed my education until the last grade, but that was only because my parents hoped I would graduate high school. In this day and age, I wanted more than that. Why would someone without dreams want to go to high school? What if I took away someone else's chance by getting in? As these thoughts swirled in my mind, I recalled a caring teacher who had encouraged me to see the world. With their support, I prepared to leave the U.S. and embark on my journey. In the U.S., taking a year off often labels you as a failure, but I learned that wasn't true in the wider world. Education can happen anywhere, and learning isn't confined to classrooms. I discovered that languages are acquired through necessity, not just formal study. I found joy in living and working, immersing myself in cultures that didn't judge based on education or nationality. Although I returned to the U.S. once as an adult, I quickly left again, traveling between the U.S. and other countries as I pursued my passion. 5 years ago, at 23, I established a U.S. subsidiary of a foreign company. To my surprise, it turned out that my company was an important business partner with my sister-in-law's husband's company. As for the wedding invitation, there had been a debate about whether to invite me as a family member of the bride or as a business partner of the groom. My brother-in-law was unaware of the feud between my mother-in-law and me, but my sister-in-law was keenly aware. She knew her mother would assert herself even at her own wedding, so we decided on an unconventional approach, inviting me from both sides. I was ready for whatever unfolded, prepared to stand my ground. We were both determined to make our mother regret her elitist views. My brother-in-law was in a panic, asking, "Are you trying to ruin my business?" His relatives and business associates gathered, wondering what was happening. It seems my mother-in-law doesn't like me. If I'm a bother, I'll cut ties right now. It finally clicked for me. Please break up with my son immediately. I understood. If my husband wishes it, I will comply. But remember, if I sever all ties, that includes the business relationship with your daughter's future husband. My mother-in-law remained unfazed, seemingly unaware of the connections she was severing, but my brother-in-law and his family looked genuinely distressed. Some bowed deeply, apologizing and urging me to reconsider, while others confronted my mother-in-law, demanding she take responsibility. Hearing the commotion, my sister-in-law arrived, furious when she learned what had transpired. I was exhausted from dealing with my mother-in-law's academic elitism, but I hadn't realized just how clueless she was about the business world. No matter how educated you are, if you can't use that knowledge, you're just societal trash, she explained, emphasizing the consequences of losing major business partners. My brother-in-law vented, "Do you want to ruin the lives of hundreds of employees? Are you the Grim Reaper?" My sister-in-law added, "Your presence ruins any happiness. Leave and never show your face again." "I no longer consider you my mother," my husband declared. "I have no intention of leaving my wife. If anyone's cutting ties, it's me, with you." "Mom," he insisted, "she's not a part of this. Score her out." And just like that, my mother-in-law was thrown out of the venue. Despite the drama, my sister-in-law's wedding went smoothly. It was an unusual start to the festivities, but the ceremony itself was beautiful, and the joy was palpable. The newlyweds decided to postpone their honeymoon due to work commitments, but didn't hesitate to address my mother-in-law's behavior through a lawyer, formally severing ties. My husband and I also documented our decision to cut ties, including conditions that prohibited her from approaching or speaking to us, which our lawyer communicated. Our business relationship with my brother-in-law's company thrived despite the chaos surrounding us. When my mother-in-law caught wind of this, she attempted to mend fences with the newlyweds, resorting to stalking them. She even showed up unannounced at their workplace, prompting security to escort her off the premises. Eventually, the situation escalated, and the police were called to handle her. Meanwhile, my father-in-law, who had remained quiet until then, was quietly making plans of his own. Satisfied with witnessing his daughter's wedding, he resolved to file for divorce. When my mother-in-law finally returned home after a long absence, he sat her down, informed her of his decision, handed her some money, and firmly told her to leave. He had put up with her behavior, hoping for a change, but seeing how fed up his children were made him realize he could no longer tolerate her. Giving her that money was his final act of kindness, but she squandered it quickly. Despite her claims of being well-educated, she was utterly unprepared for the cost of living on her own. By the time she understood what it entailed, she found herself with little left and reportedly now lives alone in a rundown public housing unit. Not long after, my sister-in-law and I both found ourselves expecting. We decided to move closer to each other, drawn by the community support and welfare benefits available to us. Our family has grown closer than ever, united in our desire for our children to grow up freely, free from the discriminatory attitudes that had plagued our past. We have many hopes for their futures, but ultimately, our greatest wish is for them to be healthy. That's where our story stands for now. My father-in-law visits us from time to time, checking in on how we're doing. With the family structure transformed, each day feels perfect, filled with joy and happiness.